if you've ever owned semi-automatic 22 LRs or really any rimfire semi-automatic, you're used to dealing with failures. But I believe there are two 22 LRs out there that are by far the most reliable 22 LR handguns made. Now, before I get into it, I do want to thank our sponsor, Jase Medical, for being the only company in the world where you can get emergency medications from a U.S. doctor and a U.S. pharmacy sent to your house in case of an emergency. Now, I have doctors that can prescribe all these medications, but I have to be sick to get them. These are there so you have them in case you get sick and you can't access these meds. I believe every American in this country should have emergency antibiotics on hand for everybody in their family. I also believe that we should all have at least a month's supply of our chronic meds on hand in case of an emergency. We've seen just in the last few months, cyber hacks of insurance companies, cyber hacks of medical systems. And one of the consequences of both those events, people went without their meds. Some people died. That's the reality of it. And that's just a cyber attack, let alone something big happens. So Jase Medical is the only one that does it. That link is below. Every single year, by far, the most popular caliber sold by volume alone is the 22 LR. And the problem with the 22 LR is being a rimfire round, there's not a wealth of reliable semi-automatic rimfire handguns. There just isn't. There's a lot of good old ones, but not very reliable. There's a lot of good new ones, not very reliable. If I go out and I buy a semi-automatic 22 LR handgun and I take it home, in my mind, I've shot a bunch of them, but in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, this is going to have some problems. There's definitely going to be failures. And the reason that I even have that in my mind, and maybe you're thinking, well, you're just being too negative, I can't help it. The reason I have that in my mind is because that has been the reality of my experiences. Rarely do I come across a semi-automatic 22 LR that is incredibly reliable. Rarely. And I've had a lot of high hopes. There's been tons of times that I've thought, oh, I can't wait till this gun comes out or that gun comes out, because reliability matters. There's only a couple things that are important to me in a gun. Definitely needs to be reliable. Definitely needs to be reliable. Otherwise, I'm not interested in even owning it at all. It needs to be accurate, and I'd like to like the way it looks as well. Call me silly. It's just who I am. I believe most people, when they look at guns in the gun store, they look around and they think to themselves, oh, I like the looks of that one. Can I see that one? Now, with that aside, let's just focus on the reliability, because, there really aren't. I've had a lot of hopes. Like I've gone through two Ruger LCP2s and 22 LR having hopes. Both of them were awful, awful, terrible guns. The new Walther PPK and 22 LR had high hopes, made in Germany. Awful, awful, unreliable gun. And really any older PPK and 22 LR, kind of reliable, but not really. If you fire 20 rounds, you're going to have one or two failures in there. The newer one, you can't make it through 10 rounds with maybe 2 to 5 failures. Same thing with the Ruger LCP2. Just horrible handguns. Now, maybe I had good experiences with them. This is just my experience only. So, I rarely come across one. If I was to, let's say, want a reliable 22 LR, there's really only two of them I'd go to. And I'm just being honest. There's only two. And they're probably not what you think, to be quite honest. One of them is the Ruger SR22, which surprises me that they can make such a reliable handgun. I've never had a failure in my SR22, ever. Not one single failure, ever. I've never heard of anybody having a bad Ruger SR22. And the other one is the Walther PPQ 22. Now, I want to take a moment and kind of talk about both these guns a little bit, because in reality, they're kind of similar. Even if you took them apart, it's really like Ruger kind of went and got a Walther PPQ and took it apart and said, let's do one of these. But it's something about that design. It's something about that PPQ and 22 design. Number one, it's got a fixed barrel. Now, this isn't a big deal because the Ruger LCP2 has a fixed barrel, the PPK has a fixed barrel. I believe a lot of it has to do with really the dimensions of the gun. Now, stay with me here. The dimensions of the gun, 5.3 inches high, 7.1 inches long, 1.3 inches wide. This is not a small gun. I would say it's about the size of like a Glock 19. One would argue carryable, but still not small. When you look at something like the LCP2, that thing is tiny. So they're packing all those things in. They're using smaller springs. They're using smaller components as a whole. And it's just not working out very well. Now, a lot of people would argue that the Ruger Mark series is reliable, and that's a totally different style of gun altogether. But I would argue it's not reliable. I've shot a bunch, and they're just not. They're kind of reliable. They're definitely better than the PPKs, and they're definitely better than the LCP2s, and they're really darn accurate handguns. But if you own one, you've had failures. Like, nobody owns a Ruger Mark Series handgun and has never had failures. Like, you've all had failures, just admit it. And if you haven't, put it in the comments below, because that's rare. That is very rare. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's something about this design, and I believe it's really the size. They're taking a larger gun, and again, I'm mid-size gun. They're taking a mid-size gun, and they're able to put components in it that are able to really, it's almost like taking a PPK and making it big. It changes things. It changes a lot of things. And that's really what I believe is the secret to why the PPQ and 22LR or the SR22, which again, I would argue is pretty much the same gun. But they're the two most reliable 22LR semi-automatic handguns, I believe, made. Maybe I'm missing something. Put it in the comments below. I don't believe I am, though. Because even those Glock 22s, I haven't heard good things. I haven't. I've shot one once, had some failures, and I haven't heard other people speak highly of them. It's just, if you like the 22LR, there's just not that many really good ones out there. And I believe, if you ask me, you want the most reliable 22LR semi-automatic handguns, it's going to be the Walther PPQ in 22, of course, or the Ruger SR22. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of the SR22 than the PPQ. Just because I've had one for a long time, and it just has never failed, ever. It's not as accurate as the Ruger Mark series, of course, but still pretty accurate. I mean, it's better than most. And one thing I will say is, going back to, if a gun's not reliable, I don't want it. I have no interest in it. And if you want my opinion on what the most reliable semi-automatic 22LR out there is, it's definitely going to be the Walther PPQ in 22 or the Ruger SR22. Any thoughts or insight on that? Definitely put it below. Again, if I mentioned one of those guns that I said had tons of failures, or really some failures at all, and you've never had a failure, put that in the comments below. Because what I will say is, I've never owned a PPQ in 22LR, but I've shot one a few times. I have owned the SR22, and in either one of those guns, I've never had a failure, ever. And I've never met anybody who had. So Any thoughts or insight on any of that, definitely put it below. Do want to take a moment and say most people watch the channel, not subscribers. Click that subscribe button. Greatly increases the algorithm and our ability to get these messages out. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.